We talked about Francis and this whole UFC contract situation for a while now, and it's just got a little bit more juicy. After winning his fight against Ciryl Gane, Francis Ngannou now is a champion. He has his contract extended for another year because of that champions clause. And Francis is coming out and saying, you know what? I'm willing to wait that year. I'm willing to sit out that extra year just so that I can get more leverage or get exactly what I want from the UFC. Francis went into detail exactly what he wants, because Ariel on his interview on the MMA Hour, he asked him exactly, what do you want? And he said, the money is not the issue here. It's more about the freedom. Freedom is his word, but in the sense he's saying his ability to do other things similar to what he believes a contractor should be able to do. And rightfully so. As a contractor, you're not an employee, right? So as a contractor, you should be able to do other things. You should be able to spread your wings to another industry or another avenue without being held to such a high standard. When you're an employee, it's a little bit different, right? You have this agreement, you have a salary, you have all these conditions, you get health benefits, you get a union in a lot of the cases. But as a contractor, you don't get those benefits. All right, that's really the major differences, and that's exactly what Francis is trying to do. He's trying to force the UFC to either make the contractor role that he's in a legitimate contractor role, or if he's an employee, he needs to have the benefits of being an employee. That's what he's essentially telling the world. He's telling the UFC when he's having these ongoing battles. If we take Francis for his word and say that he turned down all these higher amount contracts with the UFC, in a way, we kind of validate that Francis really isn't only wanting the money. Francis is not only chasing that dollar sign, because if you look at other fighters in the UFC, other fighters that may have a similar situation or similar ranking and number of fights, they make around the same amount that Francis is getting. Francis is getting $600,000, but the person that he beat for the title was getting $750,000. Now, there might be other details to his contract and details that we don't know of, but the disclosed pay is $750,000 for Stipe. I know there's other fighters at heavyweight, for example, Mark Hunt, who was getting those high six figures as well. But it seems that Francis wants more flexibility when it comes to his role at the UFC. He wants to be able to adventure off to boxing, whether that's necessarily just for the payday, or maybe by the looks of it, it's more about him wanting to try something new. He's always talked about how boxing was something he's always wanted to do, but was never able to. Francis, in terms of his leverage, if we go over what he has in leverage, he's the UFC champion. He has no more fights on his contract, and he's willing to wait a year out. Other than that, it's very, very weak compared to, say, other people in his situation, or in the situation where they are battling the UFC for a better contract. The biggest example that I'll give you is Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is not a champion necessarily, but his leverage is a lot larger than Francis's. Conor McGregor brings in a lot more revenue. He brings a lot more eyes. He elevates the brand to a level that Francis currently is not doing or not able to. If you look at his average, Francis's average pay-per-view buys so far, as of this video, the first Stipe fight and then the second Stipe fight, they average 325,000 pay-per-view buys. One of them was 300, the other one was 350, so that's 325. If we take that into account, that's relatively low to all these other stars in the UFC. Even Kamaru Usman, who is not necessarily before the most exciting fighter, is able to produce a lot of these high generating pay-per-view buys. Now that has to do with his opponent as well, being able to bring that up when in Jorge Masvidal, and then you had it in Colby Covington. But Francis relative to Kamaru Usman, for example, he produces around like half, maybe less than half what Kamaru Usman does. So add to the fact that Francis Ngannou on this last card, he was the first pay-per-view event that has this new price hike instilled in it. Now it's $5, but it did get a lot of steam. People at the press conferences talked about it. Oh, why'd you guys go up? And basically Dana White said it was not his call. But regardless, that little bump in cost does deter people. I don't think, if you were to look at how much more pay-per-view buys would be attributed to an increase in price versus a decrease in pay-per-view buys, I believe the decrease would be a lot more. I'm sure you would think that as well. Add that to Francis fighting a guy in Cyril who isn't really known in the UFC yet. A lot of people had no idea who Cyril was. So if you add all those components up, and also the rumors that this pay-per-view did not do the biggest numbers, Francis has a tough case. The biggest leverage that he has is having the title and bad PR for the UFC. The UFC does not like being looked as the bully or the people that are not able to pay fighters. There's already this whole situation with fighter pays and Jake Paul bringing it up, and then you had Dana White at a press conference bringing up Oscar De La Hoya's pay rates, what he pays his fighters in terms of I think it was a boxing event or whatever. But this pay subject doesn't seem to go away, and by the UFC's actions, they do not like it very much. Dana White not showing up to press conferences, Dana White not giving the belt, putting the belt onto Francis. That's just a little bit of what I believe, or a lot of people see, like the UFC is not liking the whole situation with Francis. I don't think the UFC will cave into Francis. I think the biggest storm that in terms of bad PR and Francis winning the title, I think that the biggest storm has passed for the UFC. What they can do is literally just wait out a year. They've waited longer without having a title fight in previous, especially in the heavyweight division. So I don't think they'll dodge questions here and there. They'll give standard answers about, well, we're talking to Francis, but we're trying to come to terms. A year will go by and Francis will get out of his contract, and maybe he'll go to Eagle FC. Khabib's out here trying to sign anyone that wants to fight for his promotion. But anyways, let us know down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you think Francis is done with the UFC? Do you think there's a chance? How does he come? Do you think what is it going to take? Let us know down in the comments.